First Contact and Fatal Mistakes. High Counselor Vexron of the Verax Confederation stood before the massive observation window of the celestial chamber, his iridescent scales reflecting the light of distant stars. The human diplomat's words from their last meeting still echoed in his mind. "Your arrogance will be your undoing. We tried to warn you." The warning had come 3 standard cycles ago. Now, as he watched the tactical displays showing yet another Verax battle fleet going dark, he finally understood its meaning. The Verax had ruled the known galaxy for 10,000 years. Their technological superiority had gone unchallenged, their dominion absolute. Their civilization had evolved from apex predators, their bodies perfectly adapted for hunting, their minds honed by millennia of strategic thinking. They had encountered hundreds of species, studied them, categorized them, and ultimately subjugated them. All followed the same pattern until humanity. The first contact had been unremarkable. Human ships appeared at the edges of Verax space, primitive by their standards, using rudimentary faster-than-light travel that left obvious quantum signatures. The early diplomatic exchanges revealed a young species, barely 1,000 years into their space age. Their technology was a patchwork of borrowed concepts, their weapons crude, their defenses simple. The Verax Assessment Council had categorized them as a Class 3 civilization, capable of interstellar travel but poses no significant threat. That had been their first mistake. Vexran remembered the initial reports with painful clarity. Humanity had seemed eager to trade, to learn, to integrate into the greater galactic community. They shared their history freely, including their conflicts and wars. The Assessment Council had seen this as further proof of their primitive nature. Any species still fighting among themselves clearly hadn't reached true civilization. That had been their second mistake. The humans had asked questions, endless questions, about Verax technology, about their social structure, about their history. The Confederation had answered selectively, maintaining their policy of technological superiority through careful information control. The humans had seemed satisfied with the partial answers, grateful even. That had been their third and most devastating mistake. What the Verax had failed to understand, what Vexron now saw with horrifying clarity, was that humans didn't just ask questions out of curiosity. They asked questions to understand the shape of what they didn't know. Every partial answer, every deflection, every carefully crafted lie had told them something. Not about the technology they sought to learn about, but about the Verax themselves. The observation window darkened automatically as a nearby star flared. The tactical displays updated, showing another fleet lost. The pattern was always the same. Human ships would appear from seemingly nowhere, using technology that shouldn't exist, striking with weapons that shouldn't be possible, and disappearing again, leaving only destruction in their wake. High Counselor, his aide's voice came from behind him. The Defense Council is assembled. Vexran turned from the window, his scales shifting to a deeper blue of concern. The assembled council members sat around the circular table, their own scales showing a rainbow of emotional states. Fear, anger, confusion. Emotions the Verax hadn't needed to feel in millennia. "Show me the latest analysis," he commanded. The central hologram sprang to life, displaying the debris field that had once been their 7th fleet. The damage patterns made no sense. Their ships hadn't been destroyed by conventional weapons. They had been taken apart at the molecular level, their atomic bonds simply severed. "Impossible technology," one of the council members muttered. "They couldn't have developed this in just 3 cycles." "They didn't," Vexron replied, his voice heavy with realization. "They had it all along. They showed us what they wanted us to see. Simple ships, basic weapons, primitive shields, all carefully crafted deceptions." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just hidden their true capabilities, they had orchestrated an elaborate performance. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation, every seemingly innocent cultural exchange had been part of their strategy. The human ambassador, Another council member spoke up. The last thing she said. Yes, Vexron finished the thought. She warned us. Not as a threat, but as a genuine attempt to prevent this. She told us our assumption of superiority would be our undoing. She tried to explain that humanity's strength wasn't in their technology, but in their ability to adapt, to learn, to understand their opponents. The tactical displays updated again. More human ships appearing, more Verax vessels going dark. Their empire, built over 10,000 years, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitive just 3 cycles ago. They're not just winning, Vexron continued, his scales now shifting to the white of resignation. They're teaching us a lesson. Each attack is different, each weapon unique. They're showing us the full spectrum of their capabilities, ensuring we understand the depth of our miscalculation. The human ambassador's final words played again in his mind. She had stood in this very chamber, her small form somehow filling the space with an authority they had failed to recognize. Your people have ruled through technological superiority for so long that you've forgotten a fundamental truth, she had said. True power doesn't come from having the most advanced technology. It comes from understanding how to use what you have, and more importantly, understanding those you're dealing with. As Vexran watched another fleet disappear from the tactical display, he finally understood the full meaning of her warning. The humans hadn't just outmatched them technologically, they had understood the Verax better than the Verax had understood themselves. And that understanding had proven to be the most powerful weapon of all. The Silent Revolution. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the heart of Earth's strategic command, watching the real-time holocast of another successful operation against the Verax fleet. The massive chamber hummed with quiet efficiency as hundreds of operators coordinated humanity's forces across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. To anyone who had seen their primitive ships just 3 years ago, this display of power would have seemed impossible. That had been the point. Status report on Project Echo, she commanded, her voice carrying across the command center. The holographic display shifted, showing a network of quantum entanglement nodes spreading throughout former Verax space. Each point of light represented a triumph of human ingenuity, technology that the Verax had deemed theoretically impossible. The truth was, humanity had mastered quantum manipulation technology centuries ago, but they had learned early in their space age that revealing your true capabilities was a swift path to conflict. So they had watched, waited, and learned from the mistakes of others. Admiral, her XO, Commander Jackson, approached with a data tablet. We've decoded another cache of Verax historical records. You'll want to see this. The files told a familiar story, species after species revealing their technological achievements, proudly displaying their capabilities, only to be systematically conquered by the Verax. The pattern was clear. The Confederation didn't tolerate competitors. Any civilization that approached their level of advancement was deemed a threat and eliminated. They never understood what they were seeing, did they? Chen mused, scrolling through the records. All those civilizations, showing their best technologies, their proudest achievements. They were writing their own death warrants. The humans had chosen a different path. When they first detected the quantum signatures of Verax ships at the edge of their space, they had already possessed technology far beyond what they would eventually show. The decision to present themselves as a young, struggling civilization hadn't been made lightly, but history had proven it wise. New contact, an operator called out. Verax Battle Group, Delta Sector. Chen watched as the tactical display updated. The Verax ships moved in their typical aero formation, still using the same battle strategies they'd relied on for millennia. They had never needed to innovate, to adapt. Their technological superiority had made such evolution unnecessary. Until now. Deploy Ghost Squadron, Chen ordered. Standard protocol. The human ships appeared from quantum silence, their true forms hidden behind carefully crafted holographic shells that maintained the illusion of primitive technology. Even now, with victory all but assured, humanity maintained its deceptions, Not out of necessity, but out of principle. Never show all your cards, even when you're winning. The battle was brief. The Verax ships, for all their apparent sophistication, might as well have been standing still. Human quantum disassemblers went to work, breaking molecular bonds with surgical precision. They didn't destroy the ships. They simply convinced matter to stop being ships. Tactical analysis confirms it, Commander Jackson reported. They're still using the same defensive algorithms they showed us 3 years ago. They'd never conceived we might have learned to counter them. That had been the true genius of humanity's approach. While presenting themselves as technological inferiors, they had studied everything, every interaction, every demonstration of Verax technology. Every casual display of their capabilities had been analyzed, dissected, and understood. By the time the Verax realized their mistake, humanity didn't just match their technology. They had evolved beyond it. Message from the Council, an operator announced. The Arctians are requesting asylum. They say they've been monitoring our operations, and they want to defect. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Arctians, one of the Verax's oldest client species, supposedly loyal for millennia. But they had seen which way the wind was blowing. More importantly, they had seen how humanity treated its allies. Accept their request, she ordered. Standard diplomatic protocols. The command center returned to its quiet efficiency. On the main display, Ghost Squadron completed its mission and vanished back into quantum silence. Another Verax battle group eliminated, another sector secured, another piece of their empire gently, precisely dismantled. They still don't understand, Jackson mused, watching the tactical displays. They keep looking for some new superweapon, some revolutionary technology that explains our success. They can't grasp that our greatest weapon was patience. Chen nodded. The Verax had ruled through fear and technological superiority, maintaining their position by keeping other species in carefully managed states of technological dependency. They had never understood that true power came from cooperation, from shared knowledge, from the kind of strength that comes from lifting others up rather than keeping them down. New intelligence report, an operator called out. The Verax High Council is convening an emergency session. They're considering a full military mobilization. Let them, Chen replied calmly. They'll gather their forces, deploy their fleets, reveal their remaining technological secrets, and we'll learn from each new revelation. That's the difference between us. They see warfare as a display of power. We see it as an opportunity to learn. The holographic display updated again, showing the steady advance of human forces across the galaxy. Each engagement was different, each victory achieved through new tactics, new applications of technology. The Verax were fighting the same war they'd fought for 10,000 years. Humanity was fighting a new war every day. And in that difference lay the seeds of revolution, not just in technology or military power, but in how civilization itself could function. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that humanity had discovered centuries ago. True strength lies not in superiority, but in the endless capacity to grow, to learn, and to change. The silent revolution had begun long before the first shot was fired. It would end not with the destruction of the Verax, but with their enlightenment, assuming they survived long enough to learn. Breaking point. The emergency meeting chamber of the Verax High Council was in chaos. Warning signals flashed across every display as their last defensive line crumbled. High Counselor Vexran watched his fellow council members argue, their scales flickering through patterns of fear and rage. Deploy the Omega weapon, one counselor demanded, scales pulsing red with fury. We've maintained it for millennia for exactly this scenario. The humans will have anticipated it, another countered, scales showing the pale blue of defeat. They've anticipated everything else. Vexran raised a hand for silence. The tactical displays told a story that none of them wanted to read. Humanity wasn't just winning. They were systematically dismantling everything the Verax had built. Each attack revealed new technologies, new strategies, new ways of thinking that made their own methods seem primitive by comparison. New contact. The warning came from multiple stations at once. Massive quantum signatures. Configuration unknown. The main display shifted to show something that shouldn't have been possible. A human vessel was emerging from quantum space, but it wasn't using any form of drive they'd seen before. It simply appeared, as if it had always been there and reality had just noticed. Receiving transmission, an operator announced. It's Admiral Chen. The human admiral's image appeared before them, as calm and composed as she had been during their first diplomatic meetings years ago. But now there was something else in her expression, not triumph, but something closer to resignation. High Council, she began, I'm here to offer you one last chance to avoid further conflict. You dare? A counselor sputtered, scales flashing crimson. After everything we dare, Chen interrupted quietly. Because unlike you, we never wanted this war. We tried to show you another way. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation, they were all opportunities for you to see beyond your own assumptions. The displays updated again, showing more human ships appearing. But these were different. They weren't hiding behind holograms anymore. Their true forms were unlike anything the Verax had imagined. Structures that seemed to bend space itself around them. What you're seeing, Chen continued, is what we really are. What we've been all along. We hid our capabilities not out of fear, but out of hope. Hope that you might learn to see beyond your own prejudices. Vexran stepped forward. You've proven your point, Admiral. Your technology surpasses ours. Your strategies have defeated us. What more do you want? Want. Chen's expression softened slightly. We want what we've always wanted. A galaxy where advancement isn't seen as a threat. Where species help each other grow instead of suppressing each other out of fear. New data began flowing across the Verax screens, scientific papers, technical specifications, theoretical frameworks. At first, Vexron thought it was tactical data about human capabilities. Then he realized what he was seeing. These are solutions, Chen finished. Solutions to problems your civilization has been struggling with for centuries. Theoretical barriers you never broke through. We're not here to replace your empire with ours. We're here to show you a better way. The council chamber erupted in confusion. Some counselors were already diving into the data, their scales showing the bright green of scientific curiosity. Others stood in stunned silence. But why? Vexron asked. Why show us this now? Because this is the breaking point, Chen replied. Not between victory and defeat. That was decided the moment you chose suppression over cooperation. This is the point where you decide what kind of civilization you want to be going forward. More human ships were appearing, each one a demonstration of technology that the Verax had deemed impossible. But they weren't attacking. They were just waiting. Your empire was built on the idea that advancement must be controlled, Chen continued. That if other species grew too capable, they would become threats. But look around you. We didn't defeat you because our technology was better. We defeated you because we understood something you had forgotten. True civilization isn't about controlling knowledge. It's about sharing it. Vexran looked at the data streaming across their screens. He saw solutions to problems that had plagued their scientists for generations. He saw technologies that would transform their society. But more than that, he saw the fundamental flaw in everything the Verax had built. The warning, he said slowly. When your ambassador said our arrogance would be our undoing, this is what she meant, isn't it? Not that you would destroy us, but that you would destroy yourselves, Chen finished. By choosing isolation over cooperation, by seeing advancement as a threat rather than an opportunity, by forgetting that the greatest strength any civilization can have is the ability to learn from others. The council chamber fell silent. On every screen, human ships hung in space, their true forms finally revealed. They weren't weapons of war. They were monuments to what civilization could achieve when it chose cooperation over control. "The choice is yours," Chen said simply. "You can continue fighting a war you've already lost, or you can help us build something better. Either way, the galaxy is going to change. The only question is whether you'll be part of that change, or another cautionary tale in its history." Vexran looked at his fellow counselors, seeing the same realization dawning in their expressions. The breaking point wasn't about military power or technological superiority. It was about understanding that everything they had believed about civilization was wrong. And in that understanding lay the seeds of their salvation, if they were wise enough to grasp it. Resistance and revelation. The next 48 hours reshaped the galaxy. From her command center on Earth, Admiral Chen watched as centuries of carefully maintained power structures collapsed like dominoes. The Verax Confederation, which had ruled through fear and technological superiority for millennia, was fracturing, not from external pressure, but from within. "Status report from the Arxian sectors," Commander Jackson announced. "Their scientific communities are in an uproar. The data we shared, they're saying it fills gaps in their research they've been struggling with for centuries." Chen nodded, watching the tactical displays. Across the galaxy, species that had been kept in careful technological stasis by the Verax were awakening to new possibilities. The knowledge humanity had shared wasn't just advanced technology. It was proof that everything they'd been told about their limitations was a lie. "Update from the Verax High Council," another operator called out. "They're divided." The main display showed the political chaos unfolding within the Confederation. Some factions, led by Vexran, were pushing for acceptance of humanity's offer. Others, clinging to millennia of superiority, were calling for one last desperate stand. "They're mobilizing the Omega Fleet," Jackson reported grimly. "Looks like not everyone got the message." Chen had expected this. Change never came easily, especially to those who had ruled unopposed for so long. The Omega Fleet represented everything the Verax had been: powerful, arrogant, and utterly unprepared for what they were about to face. Multiple quantum signatures detected. An operator announced. "The Omega Fleet is emerging, but they're not alone." The tactical display told a story that would be recorded in history books for generations to come. The Omega Fleet, the pride of Verax military might, had emerged from quantum space directly into a trap. But it wasn't human ships that surrounded them. Arxian vessels, Jackson breathed. And Alorian, Zentari, even some Varax ships. They're choosing their future, Chen finished quietly. The Omega Fleet found itself surrounded not by enemies, but by former subjects and allies. Species that had been kept down for generations were now rising up, not with borrowed technology, but with their own innovations. Innovations born from the knowledge humanity had shared. "Incoming transmission," an operator announced, from the Omega Fleet commander. The holographic projection showed a Verax military leader, his scales shifting between patterns of confusion and rage. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "You dare to turn against." "No one is turning against anyone," a new voice interrupted. An Arxian scientist appeared in the projection. "We're offering you the same choice humanity offered us, the chance to be part of something greater than empire." One by one, representatives from different species joined the transmission. Each had a story to tell, of research suppressed, of innovations hidden, of progress denied. But more importantly, each had a vision of what could be. "The humans didn't just give us technology," the Zentari representative explained. "They showed us what's possible when civilization chooses cooperation over control. Every piece of data they shared builds on our own research, our own traditions, our own ways of thinking." Chen watched as understanding slowly dawned on the Omega Fleet commander's face. The ships surrounding his fleet weren't just displaying military power, they were demonstrating what his own civilization had sacrificed in its quest for dominance. "You have a choice," she finally spoke up. "The same choice we've offered everyone. You can cling to an empire built on suppression, or you can help us build something new. Either way, the old system is over." The silence that followed seemed to stretch across the galaxy itself. Then, slowly, the Omega fleet began powering down its weapons. Not in surrender, but in recognition of a fundamental truth. True power comes not from controlling others, but from helping them grow. Multiple reports coming in, Jackson announced, his voice thick with emotion. Across the galaxy, species are starting to share their own innovations. Technologies they developed in secret, theories they couldn't discuss under Verax rule. It's like watching a renaissance in real time. Chen smiled, watching the tactical displays shift from military movements to scientific exchanges. This had been humanity's true victory. Not the defeat of an empire, but the birth of something new. Incoming message from Earth Council. An operator called out. "They're asking about next steps." "Tell them," Chen replied, "that the hard part is just beginning. Building something new is always more challenging than tearing something down. But for the first time in millennia, we're not doing it alone." Across the galaxy, ships that had been prepared for war were now becoming vessels of exchange. Species that had been kept apart by artificial barriers were discovering shared dreams and complementary innovations. The resistance hadn't just been overcome, it had been transformed into something far more powerful: hope. The revelation wasn't just that humanity had been more advanced than anyone suspected. It was that every species had the potential for greatness, if only given the chance to achieve it. And in that revelation lay the seeds of a transformation that would reshape not just the galaxy, but the very meaning of civilization itself. Legacy of warning. 50 years later, the Great Archive of Earth hosted a special exhibition. In its central chamber, delegates from across the galaxy gathered around a simple holographic display showing a recording that had changed history, the last warning from a human ambassador to the Verax High Council. Former High Counselor Vexron, his scales now showing the muted colors of age, stood before the assembly. Behind him, the walls displayed real-time data streams showing the constant flow of knowledge and innovation between thousands of civilizations. "We gather today," he began, "not to commemorate a victory, but to remember a lesson. 50 years ago, humanity didn't just defeat an empire, they showed us a better way to exist." The chamber's displays shifted, showing the transformation that had swept the galaxy. Where the Verax had once maintained careful barriers between species, now there were collaboration zones. Where they had once suppressed innovation, now there were joint research ventures. The very quantum technology they had once hoarded was now being improved upon by species they had dismissed as primitive. The humans' warning wasn't about military might or technological superiority, Vexron continued. It was about the cost of fear. For 10,000 years, we built our civilization on the belief that knowledge had to be controlled, that advancement had to be contained. We were so focused on maintaining our position that we forgot why civilization exists in the first place. Admiral Chen, now retired but still commanding respect, stepped forward. Age had weathered her features, but her eyes retained their intensity. "We didn't share our technology to showcase our advancement," she added. "We shared it to prove that every species has the potential for greatness. The Verax didn't fail because they were inferior. They failed because they couldn't imagine a universe where superiority itself wasn't the goal." The displays showed new innovations that had emerged in the past 50 years. Technologies that combined the thinking of multiple species, solutions that no single civilization could have developed alone. The Arxians' understanding of quantum mechanics had merged with Zentari energy manipulation theories. Malorian biological insights had revolutionized Verax manufacturing processes. But the greatest change, a young Arxian scientist spoke up, wasn't technological at all. It was in how we think about civilization itself. The evidence was all around them. The Great Archive wasn't just a repository of knowledge. It was a living testament to what cooperation could achieve. Every innovation, every discovery, every breakthrough was shared, examined, and built upon by species that had once been kept apart by artificial barriers. There are still challenges. Chen acknowledged. Change never comes without resistance. But look at what we've achieved in 50 years. Not just technological advancement, but genuine understanding between species that once taught each other only as threats or subjects. The displays showed the new galactic order that had emerged. Not a hierarchy with one species at the top, but a network of civilizations, each contributing their unique perspectives and capabilities. The former Verax Empire had transformed into something its builders could never have imagined. A civilization based on mutual growth rather than mutual fear. The warning we should remember today, Vexron concluded, isn't about the fall of an empire. It's about the choice every civilization must make. Do we build walls to protect what we have, or do we build bridges to discover what we could become? As if in answer, new data streamed across the archive's displays. Breakthrough discoveries from a dozen different species, each building on the work of others. The revolution that humanity had started hadn't ended with the fall of the Verax. It had merely begun. 50 years ago, Chen reflected, we revealed our true capabilities not to dominate, but to demonstrate a possibility. That civilization itself could be something greater than a competition for superiority. The real victory wasn't in defeating an empire. It was in proving that every species, given the chance, can contribute to something larger than themselves. The gathering in the archive represented that truth. Former enemies now worked side by side. Species that had been deliberately kept primitive now made discoveries that amazed their former rulers. The boundaries between teacher and student, advanced and primitive, superior and inferior had blurred and finally disappeared. The human's last words were indeed a warning, Vexron concluded, his scales showing the deep gold of profound understanding. But not of destruction, of transformation. They warned us that clinging to superiority would be our undoing, not because they would defeat us, but because we would defeat ourselves by choosing isolation over connection, control over cooperation, fear over hope. As the assembly concluded, the displays showed a galaxy transformed. The legacy of that warning had become not just a historical lesson, but a guiding principle for a new kind of civilization, one built not on the suppression of knowledge, but on its free exchange between all who sought to learn and grow. The human ambassador's warning had indeed been the end of an empire, but more importantly, it had been the beginning of something far greater, a future where the measure of a civilization wasn't its power to dominate, but its capacity to contribute to the growth of all.